You ever watch a show or a movie or read a webtoon perhaps, and think, wow, that's a refreshing change of pace? Cliches are used so often because they once were, and partially still are, popular. However, sometimes we see these cliches a little too often and they get on our nerves. And so far, there's one cliche that's really made most of us hate a basic three-sided shape. I read a lot of Webtoon series, so much so that the people who work at Webtoon are genuinely surprised by how many I read, and many of these series are romance. Now, I'm weirdly pessimistic on love, something you probably wouldn't think about with someone whose subscriptions are about 30 to 40% romance series. Now, there are plenty of reasons to love, but I cover that topic in this video, looking at the difference between love and action. But at the end of the day, romance is romance. And what makes a good series, at least to me, falls onto two aspects: the character and the situation. You can replace situation with plot, setting, drama, stakes, whatever you want. Those two aspects are the most important part of a series. Now, I personally think that the characters are the most important part of a series. Practically 80% of my videos are talking about characters and their arcs. To me, I can handle a boring plotline if the characters are just interesting and emotionally engaging. Whether that means I adore a character or I detest one. As long as they can get an emotional reaction out of me, then that character has done their job. However, even the coolest plotline with the best setting and the coolest magic and whatever can't save boring characters. To me, characters are the most important parts. However, romance provides an interesting difference. When you make a romance series, it's really easy to make them feel samey, mainly because romance by definition is about romance. Watching people fall in love in the same way can be surprisingly boring, which is finally where our romance cliches come into play. Romance cliches, or better known as romance tropes, are incredibly common, well-known, and there are so many of them. I genuinely did not expect this many. I looked up a romance trope list expecting like 50 or so, but the second and the third search result had a list of 150 and 101 respectively. Friends to enemies to lovers, secret forbidden love, friends, brothers, stuck together, fake relations, runaway bride, mistaken accident, romance, wedding planner, flings. And those are just the 12 most popular tropes on this one site. Romance tropes are a dime a dozen, and honestly, they're not that bad. I think fake romance is incredibly adorable. I think friends and enemies to lovers is super cute. Romance tropes have their time and their place, and it's hard to find a series that doesn't have a trope, which is honestly fine. It's more of a question of how much they rely on their trope. Most series don't necessarily rely on their trope. The trope is more added flavoring, an extra little perk, the side dish to the meat and potatoes of the relationship. But some do. Like I said, fake romance is one. And finally, our topic for today, the love triangle. Man, that took so long, I'm so sorry. Now, most people know what a love triangle is. Heck, there's even a fantastic video on love triangles made by Overly Sarcastic Productions. It's not exactly a foreign concept, but the idea of a love triangle is that during the build-up to a relationship, the state where the people who end up together are currently single, instead of having two people, there are three. The points of the triangle act as the people, and the lines connecting them are the relationships between them. There are a couple variations on the love triangle. The typical love triangle, or more just a love angle, with two people, usually males, vying for the main character, usually female's love. The connection between the three parties is a little more flexible. The two love interest relationship between the main character is just that, a romantic relationship, or the state before one. Meanwhile, the relationship between the two love interests themselves is the reason why their relationships are a little more flexible. In a typical love triangle or a love angle, the relationship is typically a rivalry that often form a strange bromance by the end of the series. Now, a true love triangle is incredibly hard to find. Even in the wide world of Webtoon, true love triangles are a lot more tricky, but technically make more sense. Instead of having two love interests vying for one person's love, It acts like an actual triangle, where each person is in love with another person, who in turn is in love with the other person, who in turn is in love with the other person, and so on and so forth. The reason you probably didn't have a ton of true love triangles growing up is because by definition, a true love triangle must have an element of LGBTQ+. And before, there was a lot of hesitation to create storylines because y'all were cowards. And finally, we have the love rival, or the love rival triangle. This is basically the same thing as the love triangle, but the biggest difference is in terms of balance. In a love triangle, it's hard to see who's gonna come out on top. That's gross phrasing now that I think about it. It's hard to see who the main character will end up with. Both parties seemingly have an equal chance to end up with the main character. Meanwhile, a love rival triangle is definitely not that. Instead, mainly focusing on one relationship while still adding another party to cause some trouble. They might have 1 or 2 moments with the main character and the other love interest might think that they're getting in their way, but in the end, they really have no chance. So what's the big problem here? I think I give romance series a lot of flack, mainly because they're just pretty common, especially on Webtoon. But good romance is hard to pull off. Like I've stated before, the characters are the most important aspect of a series, and I still stand by that, but something I didn't really mention is how they interact with each other. What is their connection and relationship with one another? This is usually on the back burner unless a pivotal moment comes and the main character has to prove how much their friends mean to them or something along those lines. But while important, I wouldn't call it the most important part. Meanwhile, romance fast passes this up to the top, and that in and of itself is kind of the problem. When you focus, and I mean really focus on two people's relationship, you really have to develop 3 aspects: each character and their chemistry, their relationship. It's not something you can just put on the back burner and zoom out of. Romance is all about that 3rd aspect. Developing it poorly in any other series wouldn't be too terrible. Sure, best case scenario, you want characters to have intriguing relationships with each other, but with romance, that relationship is practically another character you have to develop. It's a balancing act. You have to balance one character on one side, the other character on the other side, and all making sure you don't fall off the tightrope walk that is the romantic relationship. Missing the mark on any 3 of these can cause the entire thing to fall apart. Now imagine adding a 3rd person who's equally as important, with their own romantic relationship with the main character, and now you gotta add their relationship with the other love triangle, because unless you're Loof, and you're not, that series ended a while ago, your love interests usually have to interact with one another. With that one love triangle, that's 3 characters you have to develop, and 3 independent relationships that you have to develop as well, and not to mention that a lot of series felt bad for the person who didn't end up with the main character and added a pity character for them to end up with, so you have to develop a 4th character and then the relationships between them and the person who doesn't get with the main character, and oftentimes that relationship with the main character as well, because they usually know each other. But let's say you do all that. You perfectly develop relationships between 3 well-written and developed characters that feels fresh and interesting. Now you have to deal with drama, both on and off screen. Romance is tricky because of stakes. What are the stakes to a romance series? Usually it's just not getting with the person, and that's not all bad. So to keep tensions high, most series try to kind of pepper in heaping helpings of drama. The misunderstanding trope is one that I resoundingly hate. Y'all can't talk through your problems? Say what's on your mind? This relationship isn't worth you having an awkward moment? Love triangles are often the perfect way to add drama into the series. What's more dramatic than 2 people fighting over one person's love and attention? Drama on screen is added to create tension, added intrigue and stakes into a series that usually wouldn't have any. But it also creates drama off screen. Y'all remember Twilight? That series was basically the definition of a love triangle for a generation. Y'all were either Team Edward or Team Jacob. Now, say what you want to say about Twilight. I mean, I've only seen like the first 5 minutes of one of the movies, but that's kind of how a typical love triangle works. Even how love rivals work, if the 3rd party is even remotely likable. I think all of these add up in one word: drama. Drama is a double-edged sword. Sure, it creates tension and stakes, but drama for too long can create a strain on the relationship. Both the romantic canon one, and the relationship between the reader and the content itself. Holding on to that drama like a 20-year-old holding on to a grudge that happened to him in high school is exhausting and can get annoying since they bring it up every other sentence. I had mentioned before that the series with tropes aren't defined by their tropes. Enemies to lovers doesn't remind you every other time that they used to hate each other. Even series that are defined by their tropes, like fake lovers, don't usually cause drama every other episode. But the love triangle does both. They're defined by their love triangle and defined by the amount of drama they create. Defined by picking a side and watching everything fall apart. If you'll allow me to gush, this is where I think Webtoon series play a different game. I might not say it too often, but Webtoon is content created by fans. These series usually only have one person working on them. Bigger series often only have a small team. These series are made by webcomic fans. Fans who understand and recognize tropes that all of us like and dislike, and play that to their advantage. Love triangles aren't uncommon, but many handle them in a way that is refreshingly different. The male lead's girlfriend is actually the series that got me to think critically about this trope. When both male parties are in love with the main character, but one bows out because he values the friendship between the three of them more. A webtoon that did a similar thing to this was Nice to Meet You, as what you think is the two obvious people ending up together becomes a little less obvious. Loof straight up pulled the rug from under us, and had the main character choose herself, and not make it clear if she got with any of the love interests. An interesting take on the love rival triangle is The Girl Downstairs, in which our main character befriends and dates a pop star, as a third party falls in love with the main character, a clear love rival triangle. However, the third party actually ends up with him, and the third party goes off and does her pop star thing. Even series like Muted, which wasn't really even about love triangles, had a soft kind of love triangle with all of them ending up together anyways. I think the reason for this is, like I said, the authors know what readers like and don't like, but also a lack of fear in portraying relationships. Webtoon romance series almost never end with the people getting together. There is no fear here. There is no keeping people hoping until the last episode and then giving them some soft confirmation. Many Webtoon series are never afraid to portray a healthy relationship with the main character over an extended period of time. They don't bait you over the entire series, instead being ready and often willing to fulfill their genre, the romance part of the romance series. Are love triangles actually a problem? Not really, no. The love triangle could be an interesting way to inject some drama into your series, however, it's not without its risks. I think the reason it's become more and more of an issue is because people fail to see what a balancing act it is, and throw it in just for the extra drama, but fail to develop parts of it, or fail to deliver on the romance part of your romance series, opting for the drama part, which is a different genre altogether. At the end of the day, I don't mind love triangles, and if you're making a series that has a spot to fit a love triangle in well, then go for it. But don't force it, because the most important part of your romance series isn't the drama, but the love. But those are just some of my thoughts. What are yours? Leave them in the comments below, and I'd love to read them. But like always, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you next week. Take care.